They're not good enough to start. They're not even good enough to play. But they do talk a good game. So come join Lou and Jose from the sidelines where all the best sports discussions happen anyway. Welcome in to the Benchwarmerz podcast.
Welcome into the program, everybody. I am Lou Ruggieri, and that is Jose Ortiz, and this is the Benchwarmerz podcast. Wherever, whenever, and however you happen to be listening, we appreciate taking some time to spend it with us. We are going to make it worth your while. We're going to try to make it worth your while, but I can say with reasonable amount of surety that it's going to be worth your while today. We have an amazing show. It's going to be a 1 hour show, roughly, but it's going to be chock full of information, news, and notes. We, at the very end of this show, and this is what they call a tease in the radio business, we have our March Madness. We're celebrating March Madness in our own special kind of way, and you'll find out more about that later. But I promise you it's going to be exciting, so stick around for that a little bit later on. NBA talk, Hall of Fame candidates were announced. We're going to get to that and kind of give our takes on that. Carmelo Anthony hit a milestone in his career, so we're going to touch on him too. But first, this next, I don't even know how many minutes this is going to take. We're going to try to keep it as concise as we can. You can go back and listen to all of our other shows that we've also been very concise on the Amazon Podcasting Network, iHeartRadio podcasts. You can check us out on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, the Benchwarmerz Podcast, at the BW Pod on Twitter. You can email us, the Benchwarmerz Podcast at yahoo.com, Benchwarmerz with a Z for marketing purposes. And also, I mean, if you're listening to the podcast, you know where to find us. It drives me crazy when people say, go here, go here, go here. Like, if you're listening, you know where to find us. It's not that hard to find podcasts. So, that out of the way. Jose, we have, for an off-season in the NFL, this is a very exciting NFL week in sports. We have a lot to get to. The first and foremost, Drew Brees announced his retirement. It's official. I think we all kind of saw that coming. He got some new hair for his TV career, which I thought was a good move. I thought he should have done it a little sooner so it was less obvious, but you know, he did what he did. Maybe not so coincidentally, Taysom Hill also restructured his contract. I mean, the numbers are 4 years, 140, but it's not that's all funny money. Jameis Winston signs a 1-year contract that's worth up to $12 million. So the Saints are out officially, it looks like, of the Russell Wilson sweepstakes. And Drew Brees is also out at quarterback. So of all those three quarterbacking carousel moves, just thoughts right off the bat. Drew Brees first and foremost.
Yeah, really just a staggering career in terms of yardage and touchdowns. Obviously at the top of basically every, or near the top of basically every passing category that matters. One of the things that stood out to me, 9 consecutive seasons with 4,000 yards and 4,000 or more yards and 30 or more touchdowns. I think one of the things that I think has happened because of guys like Drew Brees is the bar has been set so high for regular quarterbacks now. It's like we've forgotten what a normal quarterback looks like because of guys like Drew Brees making it look easy to have 4,000 yards and 35 touchdowns and just it's like, oh, whatever, he had an okay season. He's one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, easily top 10, and I think could make a case for top 5.
Yeah, I would agree. I think one of the most staggering stats I saw was that Drew Brees has 5 seasons of 5,000 yards, and everyone else combined has 7.
Wow.
So just give that some perspective. I mean, that's 80,000 career passing yards. He broke Johnny Unitas's consecutive streak for throwing a touchdown in a game. Johnny Unitas, it was set at 47 for forever. I mean, think of back when Johnny Unitas played, and then Drew Brees' streak began on October 18th, 2009, and ended November 25th, 2012, and he upped that mark to 54. So it's just little things like the highest career completion percentage. I mean, it's you sit back and you forget. I think that it's easy to overlook Drew Brees, and that's not a short joke. I know he's 5'11" or whatever, but it just seems like he's easier to overlook, and I'm not entirely sure why that is, because if he was maybe it is his height, because if he was 6'4", maybe we would just say, oh, it's Peyton Manning, 2.0 or something. But maybe it's the career trajectory he took, because it was kind of a circuitous route to get where he is. He started off, just being at Purdue, and no one had really been that great at Purdue. And Chargers, then the injury with the shoulder, and then Phillip Rivers comes in, and then that's sort of that weird. We were talking about this a little bit, which might end up being a spin-off podcast at some point. Who knows? But the kind of what if factor in sports, and the big what if with Drew Brees is, if you remember back in 2005 or 2004, I guess, after his shoulder injury, the Dolphins were interviewing him, and they were interested in him, and Nick Saban was down there. And they, instead of going with Drew Brees, they ended up signing Dante Culpepper, who had also had a pretty bad knee injury. And Drew Brees, as we all know, went to the Saints, and the rest is history. But it's interesting to think what might have been had Drew Brees gone to the Dolphins instead of the Saints. And, not just for, career statistics, but just the city of New Orleans alone. I mean, I think, Drew Brees is his first team All-Pro good guy. The amount of things that him and Reggie Bush did for that city after Katrina is almost immeasurable.
Yeah, and it's one thing you're talking about when he's getting overlooked when compared to guys like Tom Brady or Peyton Manning, who basically kind of they're preeminent quarterbacks of his era. But I think if there was any knock against him, it's that his teams weren't always. The Peyton Manning teams were always like 13-3, 12-4. Like they were always just these amazing records, basically just sign them up for a number 1 or number 2 seed in the AFC. And look at some of Drew Brees' years where they were 7-9, 8-8. So there were a couple of okay seasons mixed in there, and so I think it got a little bit easy to forget about him from time to time. But yeah, absolutely a great guy, great player. As far as Taysom Hill and Jameis Winston, I mean, I guess it's nice that they'll have 2 decent quarterbacks to duke it out to see who's going to be the starter. It's hard for me to think that it's not going to be a significant step back for whoever takes over. I think that Jameis Winston has the higher upside to me, but Taysom Hill certainly has the higher floor, because we've seen how bad Jameis Winston can be. But
yeah, I would agree.
I would imagine that Taysom Hill is probably the favorite to win the job based on all the numbers.
Yeah, and the last stat I'll throw out for Drew Brees that I found just fascinating. In regards to career completion percentage, Drew Brees has 4 of the top 5 single-season completion percentage marks in history. He's 1, 2, 3, and 5.
Wow.
4th happened, and I would ask you to guess this, but I don't think that you're going to guess it. It happened in 2016, and I don't even know what team this player was. I think he was an Eagle at the time.
Nick Foles?
No. Sam Bradford.
Sam Bradford?
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
As the
when did that happen?
Single season, 2016.
What did he throw, 4 passes? I mean,
I don't know. It's so funny. It's like of all the people you would think. But either way, that's the last thing about Drew Brees.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been a storied career, and I wonder if, because I look at Brett Favre as the person I think of with Drew Brees. I feel like, Peyton Manning, I think we kind of put a notch ahead of him, but I'm not sure if that's justified at this point. Tom Brady obviously is in a stratosphere all his own. You look at a guy like Joe Montana, who has, he's got 4 Super Bowl rings, but aside from that, his stats aren't really that great. They're average, I think, I'd say at best, maybe even below average at this point. I mean, obviously it was a different era, but it's interesting to see, just talking to people and kind of how different things weigh differently to each person. But Drew Brees, I don't know. He's I think top 10 for sure, and he has an argument, I think, like you said, for top 5. The Saints with Taysom Hill, Jameis Winston, I hope. My hope for Jameis Winston is that this last year was like getting a master's degree in quarterbacking with, Sean Payton and Drew Brees, and just being able to hopefully absorb a lot of just Drew Brees's meticulousness, his OCD, his competitive psychoticness that he wants to beat you every single time. Jameis is a better quarterback than Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill, I think, is a more dangerous quarterback because he is a dual threat. But I feel like if you have two quarterbacks, you have no quarterbacks. I don't know. I still think that the Saints are not in a great position, and I'm not sure if they would have been better off trying to figure out a way to finagle Russell Wilson. I mean, they definitely would have been better off, but I don't know, salary cap wise, that if that was even a feasible notion.
And like, are you giving up 4 draft picks like that? That's the thing. Going after a guy like Russell Wilson or Deshaun Watson, just the amount of draft capital you have to give up, it ends up being like, well, are we really actually helping ourselves?
Yeah. So that's the Saints in there. We'll see what happens. I think Jameis is on a prove-it year, so we'll see. Other news, we have a lot to get to. We'll try to go through kind of the bigger names. Aaron Jones, this one actually was the most surprising to me of all the free agent signings we've seen this week. Aaron Jones signed a 4-year, $48 million extension with the Green Bay Packers, and I was very surprised by this because it makes me wonder even more what the Packers were doing with their draft last year, because they drafted Jordan Love and then they got an MVP season out of Aaron Rodgers. They drafted A.J. Dillon, and you would think that running backs especially, that you would just be like, okay, sorry, Aaron, it's nothing personal, but we got this kid on a rookie deal and we're going to save all this money. But maybe, I don't know. That to me is very surprising. I didn't think that, if you look at the running backs that have gotten second deals outside of maybe Derrick Henry and Alvin Kamara, no one has lived up to it. Not Todd Gurley, not Zeke. I guess Dalvin Cook potentially you could say he lived up to it, but Aaron Jones, I don't put Aaron Jones in that category. I don't think that he might be a top 5 running back, but not if everyone else is healthy.
Yeah, I was surprised at first because I kind of feel the same way as you about Aaron Jones. He's a good player. I think taking advantage of being in an Aaron Rodgers-led offense, which there's nothing wrong with doing that. It's just it makes you kind of this is not Christian McCaffrey on the Panthers, not this is or for that matter Derrick Henry on the Titans. This is Aaron Jones on one of the on an offense with one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. When you look at the past contracts of David Johnson, Melvin Gordon, Le'Veon Bell, Todd Gurley, et cetera, they don't look good. But the one thing I will say, and this is what I say about a lot of teams that are in win now mode. When you're in win now mode and you have a 1 to 2 year window, it's tough to then just say, Aaron Jones, you've been our second or third best offensive player for the last 3 years. We're going to just turn the keys over to someone else who's completely unproven and hope we don't miss a beat, when you've already not given Aaron Rodgers the type of help that he needs.
Yeah, and I think that is a good point. And this also harks back to our ongoing Dak Prescott debate, which we don't have to get into now, but that was a civil war in social media over the last week or two with his contract. But the one argument that I can give you for sure, and that's the idea of continuity is something it's hard to quantify, and that's the thing, especially from the outside looking in. And a guy like Aaron Jones, we're not watching him when he's picking up a blocker. Maybe we're not watching him when he's taking out a defensive lineman or chipping a defensive end. Or little things can go a long way for, especially a guy like Aaron Rodgers, who is, he's very particular and very kind of, he's very particular about what he has around him, and that might be the biggest reason to keep him around, because otherwise, running back of all positions, I think is the easiest to plug and play. But you might be right. With 2 years left on Rodgers' deal, maybe their backers are just like, this is it. This is our best shot and then it's.
And if they get a Super Bowl, in those 2 years, everything will be worth it, right? Yep. It'll all be worth it then.
Absolutely.
So, and you would think that Aaron Jones, barring health, would be able to at least maintain some level of production that we've gotten used to from him.
And speaking of Super Bowls, Rob Gronkowski actually re-signed with a 1-year deal worth $10 million with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And not surprising, I've been kind of hoping to see Julian Edelman signing with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Buccaneers also signed Shaq Barrett to a 4-year, $72 million deal. So they are reloading, as it were. And this team is just going to get better with the addition of an actual offseason and a full year of continuity, like we're talking about, behind them.
Yeah, it's nice to see them get reward their players. I was a little surprised to see Gronk get re-signed. 1 year, $10 million is not a lot of money, but they did pick up O.J. Howard's 5th-year option. They do still have Cameron Brate, who they did give a contract to a couple of years back. So a little surprised that Gronk returned, but hey, listen, he scored 2 touchdowns, I think, in the Super Bowl. So continuity, chemistry. There's something there.
Brady wants his blankie. You give it to him.
Yeah,
especially if he's willing to restructure his contract to get him. So
and Shaq Barrett, this is one deal where he's 28 years old, 4 years, $72 million. It maybe feels like you're paying him for what he did instead of what he's going to do. But I think it's also important to reward your players when they do perform well for you, and not just be like, oh well, that was last year. What are you going to do this year? Like sometimes it's nice to just reward your players for what they've done.
Well, and especially, Shaq Barrett made no qualms about saying that he wanted to get paid. So he was going to get paid somewhere. So if he's going to get paid somewhere, and at 28, you still have a couple good years left, I think that the Bucs made the right decision to, not franchise him and just kind of get him locked up for a little while. Tom Brady's old team, the New England Patriots, they've signed Matthew Judon. They signed Trent Brown. Matthew Judon got a 4-year, $56 million contract, which is pretty good. And so I feel like, Trent Brown, I don't know if you've seen him. He's the biggest man I've ever seen in my life. It's just stupid. And he's 6'8.5". At the combine, he weighed 355, and now he's listed at 380. And he was a Patriot. He ended up going back. He went to the Raiders to sign a pretty ridiculous deal. But I think the Patriots got a pretty good deal here. They got him, and they sent a 7th-round pick to the Raiders in exchange for a 2022 5th-round pick. So that's good news for the Patriots and Cam Newton, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it seems like the Patriots are kind of somewhat going all in on this team. They signed also Nelson Aguilar. They signed Kendrick Bourne, 3 years, $22.5 million. They signed Jalen Mills. They brought in Jonnu Smith, 4 years, $50 million. I'm not used to the Patriots going on these type of spending sprees. Maybe they feel like they have a chance to do something with this team. I don't know.
The Cam Newton thing, it's worth up to. I think it's worth up to like $13 million, depending on how far they go. And I was very surprised that they re-signed Cam. I really was. Now that's not to say that they're not going to draft a quarterback. I think Mac Jones' name keeps coming up, and I'm not sure how someone especially a guy like Mac Jones. How you couldn't get more different than Cam Newton to Mac Jones. Those are the most polar opposite quarterbacks I think that you have in football. But it's interesting. I don't know what the plan is. I feel like we always kind of feel like Bill Belichick has a plan, and I'm not sure. It doesn't feel that way right now. And Cam, I think Cam is kind of just. I think he's obviously past his prime, but I think he's fallen into that kind of high-end backup.
And here's the reality in the NFL, though, and this is. Maybe we'll have a chance and we'll get it back into Dak a little bit, but this is the reality in the NFL. It is hard to find a quality starting quarterback. It is not easy to find a guy who's a top 15, heck, a top 20 quarterback in the NFL. Cam Newton is getting re-signed because there is no better option, and that's what just speaks to the lack of talent available at the quarterback position. The fact of the matter is, no matter who they draft in the quarterback in the draft this year, especially if they take a quarterback in round 1, there's a good chance that he will never even be close to as good as Cam Newton was in his career. And we both think that Cam Newton was a mediocre to sometimes good quarterback. It's hard to find good quarterbacks in the NFL. So when you have a guy who's, what was Cam Newton, like a C- last year? If you were grading him a D+, it's sometimes worth it to bring the guy back. But But yeah, we agree about the roster. I don't know what they're thinking. I guess there's a minimum amount that you have to spend, or maybe because none of these guys to me are needle movers. Like Jonnu Smith is probably the best player that they signed, and what is he? The 10th or 12th best tight end in football right now. Like I mean, maybe that's disrespectful to him, but certainly not a guy that I think is really an impact free agent. So I'm not really sure what they're trying to do.
Yeah, I think Cam to me is he maybe again the same thing where it's the second year in a new system, and maybe he'll be better. I mean, Cam he had 8 passing touchdowns and 10 interceptions last year. He did rush for almost 600 yards and an additional 12 touchdowns. So I mean that maybe just having that added dynamic on the offensive end is something that Bill Belichick is just maybe he's just having fun with a guy who can actually move around a little bit. But Cam, I don't know. Cam seems more of a stopgap than a long-term answer.
Absolutely.
But the Patriots did think that they found their quarterback several years ago with Jimmy Garoppolo, and then Tom Brady kind of pulled rank and went over Bill Belichick's head to Bob Kraft, and Jimmy G ended up on the 49ers, who have just re-signed Jason Verrett or Kyle Juszczyk to a 5-year, $27 million deal, and they signed Jason Verrett to a 1-year, $5.5 million deal. Juszczyk, I feel like, is one of those guys he's vastly underrated, and that's mostly because he's a fullback. But I don't know if there's been such a thing as a receiving fullback before in the NFL, but if there wasn't before, there is now.
Yeah, I like the moves. You got to keep your guys. The 49ers were ravaged by injuries last year, and not to make excuses, but it made an impact on the team and how far they were able to get to bring back Juszczyk, to bring back Verrett, especially Verrett on a low money 1-year deal. It's nice to kind of run it back, see if we can do it better next year. Although when you look at the improvements the Rams have made, and they re-signed Leonard Floyd to a 4-year, $64 million extension, so they're thinking that they're in their window to win right now too. It's funny and even the Cardinals went out and signed J.J. Watt a couple weeks ago. It just feels like everyone in the NFC West thinks that they have a chance to win the championship this year. So. And
I think they do. I think it's crazy to think. I mean, if everybody's healthy, the Seahawks might be the worst team in that division next year. I mean, that's frightening.
Yeah.
So last 2 free agent signings: Yannick Ngakoue signed with the Raiders, 2 years, $26 million. Corey Davis signs with the Jets, 3 years, $37 million. Which one of those is a bigger impact for their team? By the way, it's the only time that Yannick Ngakoue and Corey Davis are ever going to be compared to each other. But
yeah, that's a really good question. I'm going to say Yannick Ngakoue.
I agree.
Just because the Raiders' defense has been so bad. Last 2 years, they got to 8-6, looking decent, and then just collapsed down the stretch because their defense couldn't stop anyone. Corey Davis had 1 good season, like 1.5 good years, been a bust for most of his career. I think this impacts maybe Sam Darnold a little bit more. Maybe they're trying to get Sam Darnold an extra weapon to go alongside Denzel Mims over there and see if they can get something going. But I'm not excited about that signing at all.
We kept saying Sam Darnold. I think you meant Zach Wilson.
Oh, I was like, wait a minute, he is a quarterback. Yes. How could I forget? Yes, that's a good point. Yes.
Sam Darnold. I'm actually surprised. Speaking of Sam Darnold, just to backtrack for a second, I'm surprised that I'm not. But the Patriots to me seem like a team where Sam Darnold could have thrived. I know that the Jets and the Patriots don't have the best trade history in the world, but I feel like he's someone that could use a new set of scenery around him.
Well, when he becomes a free agent, I'm sure the Patriots can just consign him rather than trade for him, right? Why not wait a year?
That's true. All right, so the salary cap has gone down this upcoming season for the first time, I believe, since 2011, and it's set at $182.5 million, which has set forth a cascade of cuts. It's almost like a Saw movie. There's so many cuts. The Ravens cut Mark Ingram, who then re-signed with the Texans. I just right there. Well, I'll read off a couple and we'll go back to them. So Ravens cut Mark Ingram. Bills cut John Brown. Broncos cut A.J. Bouye. The Lions cut Desmond Trufant. The Chiefs, very surprisingly, cut Eric Fisher and Mitchell Schwartz basically in the same day, and both just had surgery. The Vikings cut Kyle Rudolph, Dan Bailey, which is not surprising. So let's just start there. Mark Ingram, just the one thing I think somebody asked me about this because I didn't realize that the Texans had signed Mark. First, I didn't realize the Ravens had cut him, and then I didn't realize the Texans had re-signed him. And my first thought was, oh, they just signed David Johnson again.
Yeah. Yeah. I was like, it's going to be an old man competition in the camp. No, it's. I mean, I actually don't hate the signing, to be honest with you. It feels low.
Okay, but it's like two B minuses instead of having an A. You know.
Yeah, and I don't know. Maybe they plan on drafting someone or something, but you don't find A's at the position. I know that people don't think the running back is very important. Maybe that's what they're doing, saying, "Hey, running back's not that important. We're just going to get two guys, not use a high draft pick because we don't have any high draft picks. Remember, no first round pick, no second round pick this year. So
not yet
anyway. That's fair. So our first pick is probably going to be an offensive lineman or something like that, and maybe they don't plan on using a draft pick on a running back with their 3 picks or 4 picks that they have this season. So you have to sign someone. You have to get some backup. You can't just say, hey, David Johnson, we're going to give you the ball 300 times. That's not going to work.
Yeah, I would agree. And I do think I will say this about Mark Ingram. His running has fallen off a bit, but he is a leader. I mean, if you listen to him talk, he's got charisma. He gets everybody fired up, and he actually might help David Johnson become a better running back just by being competitive and kind of being this loud, boisterous, kind of exciting guy, which, you know, they're going to miss when they cut Duke Johnson. That's going to be tough shoes to fill.
I think he's already been cut, actually.
No, he was. He's been cut, yeah.
It's
I'm just making a joke because Duke Johnson's not good.
The other ones that stood out to me, Vikings cutting Kyle Rudolph. I feel like it was just he's a good
athlete. Surprise. It's been there for 10 years.
It kind of felt like they never really maximized his ability there. It just felt like just throw the guy the ball. I kept always wanting him to get more targets so he could, you know, show off a little bit more what he could do. Maybe it's just a sign that he wasn't as good as I thought he was. But there's that, and of course the Chiefs cutting the 2 offensive linemen, but then of course they signed Joe Thuney today, so I guess they already had in mind that they were not going to keep those 2 offensive linemen, and they were going to try and upgrade the position. So,
yeah, the timing of it just kind of stinks though. Yeah. That's tough. It's like, geez, let them I don't know if they made it out of the hospital before they were cut. Like this is why, you know, whoever it is, Dak Prescott, whomever, when it's time for you to get paid, you get paid because that's what's going to happen to you. You're going to be trying to recover from a surgery or something's going to be happening, and then you're going to get cut, and your NFL career is going to be over. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue. The Saints cut Quan Alexander, Jared Cook, Janoris Jenkins. I'm not sure about Quan Alexander. Jared Cook is sort of he's like a journeyman tight end. I feel like he could end up back on the Packers. He could end up on the Patriots. He could end up on the 49ers. He's still got some value somewhere on the right team.
Yeah.
Same thing with Janoris Jenkins. He's still a good cornerback. Maybe he moves to safety at some point, but he's got enough talent where I think that he won't be a free agent for too long, provided he doesn't try to get, expect too much money.
Mm-hmm.
Emmanuel Sanders gets cut also. That one I think is that hurts the most for the Saints. I mean, that's tough because Michael Thomas is great, but it's a lot easier to be great when you have someone taking the pressure off you. And Emmanuel Sanders, again, is going to end up somewhere because he's sort of that, what did you call it? Like that Anquan Bolden type, at this point, where I think he's actually a lot faster than Anquan Bolden still, even with
Not as big, though.
Yeah. But he's kind of that when you need a catch in the clutch, he's the guy to get. The Giants cut Golden Tate. The Titans cut Malcolm Butler. Both of those guys could end up somewhere. The Golden Tate, I feel like, still has some gas left in the tank. I'm not sure where he fits. He's a guy like, if I'm the Packers, I'll offer him, league minimum or something. Just somebody opposite Devontae Adams. I don't care. Just give me somebody. Emmanuel Sanders would be great, but Golden Tate would be a good fit too.
I was actually thinking the Ravens, looking at Golden Tate, just because of just how their offense kind of in that short range area. Golden Tate's a perfect possession type receiver.
Yeah, that's good. Malcolm Butler will end up somewhere. Franchise tag deadline. So there was Allen Robinson got franchised by the Bears, Chris Godwin by the Bucks, Leonard Williams by the Giants, Chris Carson, Kenny Golladay, Hunter Henry, all not tagged with the franchise tag. Interesting. Which one of those is the most surprising?
I guess Hunter Henry of all of them, because Kenny Golladay wouldn't have made sense. Chris Carson, they're not. I'm worried about Chris Carson the rest of his career. He may not get another contract, or
he might not have a career after this.
I'm not sure what to expect, because all the free agent running backs. Then you have the draft running back. I just feel like there's going to be a lot of decent running backs, veteran running backs that end up on the outside looking in, or without a chair to sit in when the music stops. But Hunter Henry just kind of felt like you have a decent offense there with the Chargers, and you'd want to kind of keep it together so you can have Justin Herbert grow. But maybe they're trying to sign Mike Williams to a long-term deal. I don't really know, but Hunter Henry going seems weird.
Yeah, that one is the biggest surprise of that group to me too, because mostly because Justin Herbert's on his rookie deal, so you have money to sign guys like this. And if it's a franchise tag, maybe they didn't franchise him because they want to not pay him that much and they want to pay him less over a longer period. Who knows? But I do expect Hunter Henry to be on the Chargers next season. Okay. I don't think that they're going to let him go. I think they're going to figure out a way to sign him possibly to a longer deal, because he was injured for a while and he's been pretty consistent since last season or two. He's gotten a lot better in terms of health, but we shall see. Last thing, it's been a week of fallout since the Dak Prescott signing. It's waves across the country. We've started a Facebook war with each other over this, and it's so we've kept it civil. I think we've drawn battle lines. I appreciate no low blows, no mom jokes, no nothing like that. So, but Dak, after a week of reflection, has your feelings or thoughts about Dak Prescott signing? And we won't. This could take over the rest of the show, so we'll make it quick. But has your thoughts or feelings about Dak Prescott changed at all?
They've shifted a little bit. I want to just clarify for anyone who might have mistaken me, whatever. I do think the Cowboys overpaid for Dak Prescott. I can concede that.
So does Jerry Jones.
It's hard, yeah. It's hard to justify making him one of the highest paid players in NFL history.
Yeah.
Not even, and I want to say based on his track record. It's not like he has a bad track record, but he doesn't have a great track record. Right? He's been a good player, not an amazingly great player. What that would compare to a Patrick Mahomes or something. But what I can't concede, and I'll be very quick about this because this has been really bothering me the whole week. There's two narrative points that I can't concede that have frustrated me. One, the Cowboys will never win a Super Bowl with Dak Prescott. Here's the issue I have with that. One, it's probably true. But two, the Cowboys, you could say that about almost any person on any team. It is very hard to win a Super Bowl. And if you're saying that Dak's not good enough to win a Super Bowl, that's also incorrect, because Dak's better than a lot of quarterbacks who have won Super Bowls. What I can say about the Cowboys is I don't think that they weren't one player away from winning the Super Bowl. It's Aaron Rodgers only has one Super Bowl. Drew Brees only has one Super Bowl. Matt Ryan has none. Just because you don't have a Super Bowl, you don't win a Super Bowl, or you can't win a Super Bowl, whatever, it doesn't mean that your contract is worthless. Oh well, they're never gonna. Do they get their money back if they doesn't win a Super Bowl? It's like, well, does everyone give their money back? Does Aaron Donald give his money back if they don't win a Super Bowl? What about J.J. Watt? What about Khalil Mack? It just feels like this like, oh my God, Dak Prescott's the worst quarterback to ever play. And it's like this just taking for granted of Dak's ability. If the Cowboys aren't winning a title with Dak Prescott, they aren't winning a title at all. Because Dak Prescott may not be a top 5 quarterback, but he's absolutely an above average NFL starter. And if you want to let Dak go and try and replace him in free agency or the draft, good luck. You just saw the Patriots sign Cam Newton because they had no one. You want to get Ryan Fitzpatrick? You want to roll the dice with Andy Dalton or Ed DiNucci? None of the quarterbacks that are good are going to be available in the draft. So I just, teams like the Dolphins, the Bears, and the Jets have been waiting decades for a player as good as Dak Prescott to play quarterback for them. That's all I have to say.
All right. Well, the one thing I'll say that struck me in everything you said there is the difference between, yes, it is hard to win a Super Bowl, but Aaron Rodgers has one Super Bowl and 3 other NFC Championship appearances. Drew Brees should have 2 Super Bowls, or at least 1 Super Bowl and a Super Bowl appearance. He has a total of 3 NFC Championships. So it's not just, I don't think it's just about the Super Bowl. I think, but you look at the confidence that a team like the Saints had, when they were robbed with that ridiculous call against the Rams, and the confidence that even Aaron Rodgers had in those NFC Championship games. You felt like they could win that game. I feel like with Dak Prescott, he doesn't inspire that same level of confidence because he's not the same caliber of quarterback. So
he's definitely not. Those are 2 of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. I'm sorry. Right. Yeah, go ahead.
And the problem is, over the next 3 years, Dak Prescott is making double what Patrick Mahomes is making. And in Patrick Mahomes' first 3 years as a starter, he made an AFC Championship, made 2 Super Bowls, won 1, and oh, by the way, threw 50 touchdowns in a single season. Dak is not. It's just. And like I said,
I will concede that he was overpaid. But what I won't concede is that he's not good enough to win a Super Bowl because freaking Trent Dilfer won a Super Bowl. He is good enough to win a Super Bowl if the Cowboys can draft the way these other teams that drafted. The teams that you talk about that had a rookie quarterback on a rookie deal or whatever. It wasn't that they had a rookie quarterback on the rookie deal and then they signed all these free agents and then made a run. They had a rookie quarterback on a rookie deal and had a team that they had drafted and assembled that was great. And they're like, sweat, we have a quarterback. Let's go make a run for it. The Cowboys are not in that position, not because they paid Dak Prescott, because they haven't drafted as well as they should have.
I'll agree with that. Dak is with the right situation around him. If Dak today, 4 years later, could have the same team that Dak came into the NFL with, I think that they could compete for a Super Bowl. I don't know. I feel like Dak just has to sit on a bench somewhere until Tom Brady retires, just like the rest of the world. Just let him go, and we'll stop with this. But Dak, the one thing I will concede to you, as long as we're because that's the difference with our show with all these other hot take shows. You are right, and I think I mentioned this earlier in the show. I think that Dak being there this season, the continuity aspect of this with a second year under Mike McCarthy, you have this whole combination of players and talent on the offensive side, and then you take your draft and assuming the Cowboys can do anything in the draft, I would use all of my picks on defense.
Absolutely.
All of them. They don't need a single piece on offense except maybe an offensive lineman. Mm-hmm. Other than that, you just rebuild your defense and just throw away everyone but maybe Van Der Esch and Sean Lee will play 1 game and then he'll be gone. So
can they get someone to stay healthy on their defense too?
DeMarcus Lawrence. I mean, it's just something.
To fire their training staff or something. Yeah. Like someone's got to stay healthy.
Well, Dan Quinn is now their defensive coordinator, which, say what you want about Dan Quinn as a head coach. Dan Quinn as a defensive coordinator, I think, might actually make a difference in Dallas, but we'll see. I think that Dak, and the last thing I'll say is just Dak this year, I do think that it gives the Cowboys their best chance to win right now. Outside of, with the exception of maybe getting Russell Wilson. I don't think that, honestly, and this might be a little controversial, but I think that Dak would give the Cowboys a better chance this next season, over Deshaun Watson. Now, in subsequent seasons, I think that shifts drastically, and I think Russell Wilson is the only one that you could plug in who might have better success right out of the gate than Dak Prescott, but remains to be seen. we have to come up with some kind of bet for Dak Prescott. I'm not sure what we can do as far as that, but we'll get a big board going. So we do have to take a break. We're up against the break. We have to come back. It's time to switch gears. The NBA, we're going to go around the NBA a little bit, mostly talking about the Hall of Fame candidates coming up and Carmelo Anthony. And then we have to announce our March Madness celebration. I don't know how to say it. Our version of March Madness, I guess. This is going to be an annual thing, and it's going to be fun. So I'm super excited for that. We're going to make the announcement today, along with some other fun announcements. So stick around. Follow us along. Amazon Podcast, iHeartRadio podcasting lineup, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, the Benchwarmers Podcast at the BW Pod on Twitter, the Benchwarmers Podcast at yahoo.com if you want to email us. And we are available pretty much everywhere podcasts are available. So stick around. We've got a lot to do still. This is the Benchwarmers Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Benchwarmers Podcast. Follow along with us on the Benchwarmers Podcast on Facebook and Instagram. And don't forget to review us on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts.
If you think or know you had COVID-19, you can be around others after 10 days since symptoms first appeared, and after 24 hours with no fever without fever-reducing medication, and after other symptoms have improved. If you have tested positive for COVID-19 and you had no symptoms, you can be around others 10 days after you got tested for COVID-19. To learn more, visit cdc.gov/coronavirus.
Welcome back to the Benchwarmers Podcast, where being all talk is actually a good thing. Now, back to the action. Or talk, I guess.
Welcome back to the program, everybody. I am still Lou Ruggieri. That is still Jose Ortiz. And this is still the Benchwarmers Podcast. Appreciate you taking some time to spend it with us. Hopefully you've had some fun with us thus far. Tons and tons and tons of NFL news, free agent signings, cuts, franchise tags, all kinds of stuff like that. You can go back and listen and find us. We're on Amazon Podcasts, iHeartRadio podcasting lineup, or wherever you get your podcasts. Or you can follow us along on social media, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, at the BW Pod on Twitter. I want to talk a little about the NBA Hall of Fame candidate class coming up. I think is very interesting to me, and we kind of gotten a little bit of a talk about this, Jose, off the air. I'm gonna read you the list of these names, and I'd like you to order them just from the eye test. Who you think is the most deserving, down to the least deserving of getting into the Hall of Fame. Okay, so this is the list in no particular order: Chris Bosh, Paul Pierce, Michael Cooper, Tim Hardaway, Chris Webber, and Ben Wallace.
Now, when I say their names, do you want me to give you like a sentence afterwards to describe, or should I just give you the name and move on?
Just from the eye test, right off the bat.
Okay.
Just I put them in order, and then
number one to me is Paul Pierce. Number one is Paul Pierce. Okay. Number two is actually, number one's Paul Pierce. Number two is probably Chris Webber. Number three is Chris Bosh. Number four would be Tim Hardaway. Number five, Ben Wallace, and number six, Michael Cooper.
Huh. All right, so why Paul Pierce first? Because I had trouble with this. Paul Pierce and Tim Hardaway, or Paul Pierce and Chris Webber, excuse me, were the ones that were 1 and 2, and I'm not sure.
That's why I kind of like paused for a second, because I was looking back and forth at Chris Webber, Paul Pierce. I put Paul Pierce at number one. Well, one, he's got the championship. He went to the NBA Finals another time. I feel like Paul Pierce. And this is similar to Chris Webber in some ways too. He was a great player who had the unfortunate timing of playing at the same time as Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, Allen Iverson, and Steve Nash. Yeah. And he wasn't really a particularly exciting player to watch. It just wasn't, not to say he was, just there was really nothing flashy. He didn't have like this amazing handle. He wasn't really super fast or high flying. It was just, he found a way to get buckets. Mm-hmm. And I just think if you just look at him, it's unquestioned scoring ability, one of the top 10 players of the 2000s. And Chris Webber, he's kind of the same. I don't really actually know what the holdup is with Chris Webber not getting into the Hall of Fame. basically a career 20-10 player. I suppose if there's a knock against, he was never really truly an MVP candidate, maybe one season, and not really that top 5 type player. But he was still a great player. And so when I look at Chris Webber, I think, yeah, absolutely one of the best players I've ever seen in my lifetime.
Yeah, Chris, I think I put Chris Webber first on this list, and mostly because Paul. Yeah, I mean, back side by side, it's hard to really say there's too much different. Paul Pierce, obviously, he won the ring with the Celtics. He was the Finals MVP that year. He's 10-time All-Star. He's a rookie first team. He won, I think, the 3-point contest in 2010. Chris Webber, though, I think gets the nod, although he was a 5-time All-Star. But I think his collegiate career is what helps him, because you remember, it's the Basketball Hall of Fame. It's not the NBA Hall of Fame. And that's, I mean.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. I forgot about that. I actually forgot about that. That probably would give him the edge. That probably would. You convinced me. That would give him the edge. I forgot about that.
Because, Chris Webber in the NBA was not. He was great, but it felt like he could have been better. And I don't know if that's maybe because he was on a lot of bad teams for a very long time.
He just kept running up against if you remember, towards the end of his career when he was on the Sacramento Kings with Peja Stojakovic and Doug Christie, he kept running up against the Lakers, who had Shaq and Kobe. And sometimes that's just the story with some of these players where, like, they're good players, they're great players, but you kind of forget about them because they kept running against better players, and they kind of get lost in the sauce a little bit.
Yeah, that's true.
Especially without any MVPs. Especially without any MVPs in his credit, or to his credit.
And I think Chris Bosh would be next. And Chris Bosh was. It's funny because on the Raptors, he was just a force of nature, and then he kind of he was sort of relegated to sort of a role player with LeBron and Wade, and I guess to a point you have to give him credit for that, where he just kind of went from being a big fish in a small pond to a small fish in a big pond with a great white shark swimming around named LeBron James. And so I guess Chris Bosh does deserve that third spot.
He's on the borderline. To me, he's on the borderline. He's a borderline Hall of Famer. I'm not 100% sure. I think the 2 championships probably push him over the edge. But the discussion we're having right now about Chris Bosh is the discussion a lot of players are probably having internally, and they're saying, okay, I'm dominating. I'm Bradley Beal. I'm just dominating right now on this trash Wizards team. Mm-hmm. If I go to join the 76ers or the Lakers or wherever, fill in the blanks, and now I've joined to make a super team. I've gone to make a super team. Will my legacy, how will my legacy be? Because Chris Bosh, if he had, looking at his numbers right now, he was basically a 23-10 player for the Raptors. That's absolutely Hall of Fame numbers. But what would they feel empty? Would they feel invalidated if he had done that for his entire career without a championship?
I mean,
then a lot of players have to ask. A lot of players have to ask themselves that question. James Harden is the guy who has to ask himself that question. Russell Wilson, Westbrook have to ask themselves this question: do I want to be on a super team, or do I want to just do what I do? Damian Lillard, another guy. You look at Chris Bosh.
Yeah, so I think next, I'm not sure. The hard one for me was Michael Cooper. And Michael Cooper, to me, I didn't really get a chance to watch him play. He has an amazing career. I mean, he's a 5-time champion. He's NBA Defensive Player of the Year in 1987, 5-time All-Defensive First Team, 3-time All-Defensive Second Team. He's 7,000 points in his career, 3,000 assists, 1,000 steals. I mean, that's pretty good numbers. And I think he kind of got lost in that Magic Kareem era. He's sort of just, you forget that he was around then. But he's the one that was hard for me because I didn't see him, so I can only look at the stats, which don't always tell the whole story.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. just looking at his, so I grew up hearing about Michael Cooper, but I didn't get a chance to watch and appreciate his game and really get the context needed for a player like this. You look at a guy like Wilt Chamberlain or Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, we don't have to have watched him play to look at his numbers and be like, wow, yeah, Hall of Famer. Like, get out of my face.
Yeah.
Like, Michael Cooper, his numbers don't scream Hall of Fame to me. Screams like a nice NBA role player or starter, a key cog in the championship dynasty, but not really a Hall of Famer to me.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised that you would have Michael Cooper ahead of Tim Hardaway, because I look at Tim Hardaway as a guy who had the numbers really early in his career, especially, and maybe one of the most famous moves in basketball history with the killer crossover. He just never really took that superstar leap. I actually have Hardaway ahead of Cooper by a lot.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, Tim Hardaway to me, and I'm kind of dancing back and forth with Tim Hardaway and Ben Wallace actually, because it's such apples and oranges comparison. Tim Hardaway, I mean, he was unbelievable. You know, he was the centerpiece of the Heat before Dwayne Wade. You know, long before, a decade or more actually, probably 15 years before Dwayne Wade got there. 5-time All-Star. He was All-NBA first team in 1997. Most importantly, I had his shoes at one point in high school, the Air Bacons. I did change. They were these red shoes, black with red, and then these bright yellow laces that I thought were ugly, so I switched them out for black laces, and they looked a lot better. I actually still think I have those shoes, not to go off on a tangent, but yeah, Tim Hardaway, that crossover, I tried to replicate that crossover so many times, and it's just, I mean, it bordered on, like, palming the ball because it just hung, and then that it was ridiculous. I think up until Iverson kind of stole that from Tim Hardaway, Tim Hardaway was the crossover guy.
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned the Air Bacons. Up until you just said that, I literally thought that the Air Bacons were for Mitch Richmond. I thought that they were Mitch Richmond's shoes. I didn't even. I completely. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Thank you for correcting me. But yeah, I mean, and here's the thing. Maybe Tim Hardaway. Maybe he's just in the Hall of Good, right? Just a really good player. Just never really took that superstar leap. And I think that's what I look at in his career. Like, oh, look, he's a big. In 1992, 23 points, 10 assists. 94, 93, 21 and a half, 10.6 assists. And then it just never really went up from there. It just went down. It kind of peaked in year 3. And so. Yeah,
he's got 15,000 career points. So he did something.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Ben Wallace. I mean, Ben Wallace is hard to, at first, when I first thought of it, I was like, Ben Wallace Hall of Famer? I don't know. And then I started looking at his accolades. He was a 4-time Defensive Player of the Year. I didn't realize that he was a 4-time Defensive Player. That's crazy to me. 4-time All-Star. He made the second and third teams a bunch. He was the rebounding leader for 2 years. He was the blocks leader for a year. You know, he's got 6,000 points, 10,000 rebounds, and 2,000 blocks. I mean, that's a pretty good. And let's not forget, he was one of those. The best players on that Pistons team that shocked the world when they beat the Lakers in the finals. I mean, that was, to this, I still don't know how they did it. It's the ultimate team, rah-rah story where it's like, hey, if you play as a team and no one's really the centerpiece. I mean, I think Chauncey Billups was the MVP that finals.
Yeah.
And it's just crazy.
Well, quickly breaking down their strategy, one of the things, and I'm sure you know this, but one of the things that they did against that Lakers team was basically just hold the ball until under 5 seconds on the shot clock. And by doing that, they really limited the amount of offensive possessions that the Lakers had. That was really the number one strategy. They're just like, we have to keep the ball out of their hands. We have to make this a half-court game. And they were able to do that and slow the Lakers down a little bit. Ben Wallace, actually, it's funny. At first I said, no, he's not a Hall of Famer. But especially because he never even averaged 10 points per game. But when you just look at how dominant he was as a defensive player, it's one thing to be a good defensive player. It's another thing to be one of the best defensive players in NBA history. And that's what Ben Wallace was. and then also the blueprint is there for him because Dennis Rodman's in the Hall of Fame, and they're basically the same type of player. So
I mean, Bill Russell is pretty good defender.
Well, Bill Russell also had a much better offense than Ben Wallace. I mean,
that's true. That is true.
But still, it's another
Dikembe Mutombo.
Yeah.
Mind.
Yeah. There is a spot for him. There's definitely a spot for him.
There is also a spot for this other guy who's not up for the Hall of Fame yet because he's still playing. But Carmelo Anthony this week hit a milestone. He passed Kareem Olajuwon.
Hakeem Olajuwon.
Hakeem Olajuwon. Sorry, I was still on Michael Cooper mode. I was thinking Hakeem. Yeah, that would have been that's a weird mashup.
Yeah.
Hakeem Olajuwon is the actual way to say that guy's name. Melo passed him he's now 11th all time. Hakeem is 12th. And because the first question I had was, well, who were the 10 guys ahead of Carmelo? In descending order, Elvin Hayes, Moses Malone, Shaquille O'Neal, Wilt Chamberlain, Dirk Nowitzki is 6th, Michael Jordan is 5th, Kobe's 4th, LeBron is 3, Karl Malone is 2, and Kareem, the aforementioned Kareem, is still number 1. So this was, I was shocked, actually, because Melo's one of those guys. I mean, he was James Harden before James Harden.
Yeah.
Melo is like first team all money. He wanted the big contract, and it's almost a cautionary tale in a way where be careful what you decide is important, because Melo, I feel like after a certain point you can't use any more money. It's like it's all the same. Like if you have $300 million or you have $400 million, really not much changes. But Melo, he's a 10-time All-Star, but scoring champion. I mean, he's a catch and shoot all day, but he's never done anything. I mean, he won in college, and then he never really was able to make an impact in the NBA, mostly because he just wanted to get paid, and for teams to pay him, they had to get rid of all the good people around him. And so, I don't know. It's interesting. Like Melo's definitely a Hall of Famer, but it feels like his career is incomplete.
Yeah, Carmelo Anthony is one of these players who I feel like maybe he should have tried to join a super team, and because what you're talking about is what LeBron and Dwayne Wade did, right? They said, you know what, we're not going to take the most money that we can get. Yeah. We're going to take less money so we can team together and win a championship. And that's not what Carmelo Anthony did. Carmelo Anthony was not trying to team with anyone. He's going to be, I'm going to do this myself. I'm going to go and take a team to the top. No, you're not. Not in today's super team NBA. It's not happening. You need multiple players to be great. They had like a half season with Amari Stoudemire, and then Stoudemire couldn't stay healthy. But Carmelo Anthony is kind of a disrespected star to me, kind of in a similar way of Paul Pierce, where just kind of had the unfortunate timing of playing with some of the all-time great players and kind of gets overlooked as a result. And I think had he found a way to get onto one of these super teams and get a championship, maybe we'd look at him a little bit differently.
Yeah, I mean, the closest he came to a super team was joining forces with Allen Iverson on the Nuggets. I mean, I guess, Iverson was a little...
it was that half season they had with Amari Stoudemire where the Knicks were actually playing well.
Yeah.
And then Amari Stoudemire got hurt and it was never the same again. And there was the 1 year where they won 55 games with the Knicks and they won a postseason series. And then that's basically it. And he's also the other thing that I would say a knock against Carmelo is just, he doesn't have the defense. He's certain players can really only impact the game when they're scoring. Yeah. And Carmelo Anthony is one of those players where if he's not scoring, he's not really having an impact on the game.
Yeah, and Melo, it's tough too. Not only playing against guys like the Lakers, but being drafted in the same class as LeBron James isn't doing you any favors either. You're perpetually going to be kind of the second fiddle to a guy like LeBron. So that's another one that kind of stunk for Carmelo, but he did win. He got a ring at Syracuse. During the 2002-2003 season, he was basically the reason they won. He averaged 22.2 points a game. I mean, he was a monster, and he was one and done. I mean, he was unbelievable in college, and that might be the thing. I mean, not that I think that Melo's going to get into the Hall of Fame pretty easily, but because it is the Basketball Hall of Fame, it's not, he has a championship to his credit, albeit a collegiate one. And that brings us to, speaking of college basketball, Jose, I want to just get this in now because we have been kind of teasing it for a while. And it's March Madness, and us as a collective Benchwarmers podcast show, I think that we can own up to the fact that we are not the biggest college basketball fans. It's just, I'm not sure what it is about college basketball that I don't really get into. Maybe it's just too many games on too many different times with too many channels, and I can't keep up. And then, there's so many nameless players that it's hard to keep track of it all. At least that's one of the reasons I can think of. But we decided that we're still going to celebrate March Madness, and I'm very excited by this. And the announcement that we're doing a March Madness. We're still doing a March Madness bracket, but it's going to be Benchwarmers style. And our Benchwarmers 2021 March Madness bracket is not going to be college basketball teams. It's going to be breakfast cereals. That's right. Breakfast cereals.
And we put together our 32-team bracket, our 32 cereal bracket, which I think it's, looking at these names here, I think they're pretty representative of the best cereals that are out there. Listen, you can email us, hit us on Facebook or Twitter. Let us know if you don't agree with our list, although it's basically set now, so it's not much to do about it. But listen, we can listen to you being wrong about, about which cereals should be on the list. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and go through, just go ahead and list them off here.
Yeah, so these are so we decided to do a 32 seeded bracket because we just decided 64 just present a lot of logistical issues and just time constraints and things like that for the show and for the website, and which will be up soon. As a matter of fact, our website is it's in the works. It should be up hopefully this week is the goal, and this is going to be kind of our launching point for that. And I just want to so the first round, the 32 cereals, we're on the quest to find the best cereal, and we're just pitting them against each other in random order. The first round, we're going to decide for ourselves. We're just going to run through them. Probably next week is going to be round one, and we're going to go through them. After that, we're going to start asking for kind of a tiebreaker because the matchups are going to get a lot harder. And so Jose's going to have a vote. I'm going to have a vote, and then we're going to try to have listener votes, and we'll take those through kind of the aforementioned, emails, social media, wherever, whatever, however you get your vote to us, we're going to factor those in, and that's going to be sort of the tiebreaker for a lot of these coming up.
So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go ahead and list our first round matchups. I'm going to try and go through quickly. I know we're up against the clock. I'm going to try and speed through these.
Yeah.
But in round one here, Lucky Charms versus Cocoa Puffs. Count Chocula versus Reese's Puffs. Golden Grams versus Apple Jacks. Life versus Cinnamon Toast Crunch. Fruit Loops versus Grape Nuts. Fruity Pebbles versus Trix. That's a blue blood matchup right there.
That's like Duke, North Carolina.
Kentucky. Yeah.
Jeez.
Frosted Flakes versus Cookie Crisp. And Honey Smacks versus Cocoa Pebbles. Now we're going to the other side of the bracket here. Cheerios versus Special K. Captain Crunch versus Kellogg's Corn Flakes. Honeycomb versus Raisin Bran. Which I think is a tough one right there, actually. Chex versus Honey Nut Cheerios. Kix versus Apple Cinnamon Cheerios. Rice Krispies versus Corn Pops. Honey Bunches of Oats versus Wheaties, and Total versus Mini Wheats.
Total making the tournament.
Frosted Mini Wheats.
Total making the tournament. Wow, that's a.
Listen, you got to get a 32. You got to get a 30-second seed in there.
Listen, somebody's got to make it in.
Yeah,
that's it. And I think we have a pretty solid list. I sense, and I'm not going to give anything away. There's some first round blowouts. I think those are going to be some pretty easy ones. There are a couple tough matchups there, and this if nothing else, I don't care if no one listens to this. I'm going to have a blast with this bracket, and I'm going to have fun doing it, and I know you're going to have fun doing it. And honestly, that's all I care about. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Our Sweet 16 and Elite 8 matchups are going to be insane. Like you're potentially looking at Fruit Loops versus Tricks in the Sweet 16, which good luck with that one.
That's
you look at Golden Grams or Apple Jacks versus Cinnamon Toast Crunch in the second round. It's not going to be an easy road for whichever cereal happens to be crowned champion, but we're going to get through this and crown a king of the cereal aisle.
Yeah, and we're going to do it with your help. So feel free. You can follow us along at iHeartRadio Podcasting, Amazon Podcast. You can vote by either emailing us at thebenchwarmerspodcast@yahoo.com, or we'll post this on social media so you can comment, and we'll take comment votes are accepted as long as no burner accounts are being used. Jose, don't cheat, please. We're very
I don't have any horse in the way.
Yeah.
I don't have any horse in the race here. No horses in the race.
So this is going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited, and it's going to be a good time. And it's our way to celebrate March Madness because, like I said, we pride ourselves on being something of we're genuine with our, sports talk. We don't like to just make things up to talk about for no reason. We talk about things that we're interested in, and there's things that we're not interested in that we don't talk about because we don't know enough to talk about them. And that's a good. I think that's a good philosophy to have because no one wants to hear people talking about something they don't know about. Yep. So we know breakfast cereals. We know it's March Madness. So we decided to mash those things together, and we came up with what I think is a stellar idea and a stellar bracket that is going to be a lot of fun. So that's going to do it. So stick around for that. Stay tuned for that, I should say. And that's going to be coming up this week. Social media, you can follow us along on all kinds of platforms. You have heard them 1,000 times by now, so I won't repeat them. But yeah, so looking forward to it. Next week, the 32 cereal teams are in the running, and we're going to go through the list and knock them off one by one. And I'm already excited. I might start doing it right now. So that's going to do it. So for Jose Ortiz, I'm Lou Ruggieri, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.